Today on Ask Miyazaki, we talk about managing negative customer reviews on social media, the value of unpaid internships, and whether traditional media and advertising like television and magazines will ever be replaced entirely by social media. I may have something unexpected to say about that last one. Jean Carlos asks, will traditional advertising such as television and magazines ever be replaced entirely by social media marketing? Will future generations likely rely solely on social media for their sources? Jean Carlos, my answer to the first of these questions may end up being exactly the opposite of what most marketers might be tempted to say today. We've already seen the decline in television watching and magazine reading by the general public. Simultaneously, we've seen an increase in the time spent on social media. And these bits of data would suggest that television and magazines are on the way out, and maybe social media is taking their place. And the logical result of this would be that marketers would focus more on social media marketing and advertising rather than spend that money on television and magazine advertising. But there's something happening right now to your social media experience that's been happening for a while that throws a wrench into this thinking. More and more of the social media content that you consume, that you watch and read, is produced by the big companies that have been producing content for television and magazines, as well as the brands that fund the television and magazine advertising. This means that less and less of your social media content consumption is actually social, between regular people, and instead is carefully constructed content that has a purpose not much different than that of the mass media that people have been watching and reading for years. So, while technically advertising dollars are transferring from traditional media to digital, including social media, it's clear that the content is transferring as well. You see, the platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and all the rest started out being built on the content that all the users, the regular people like you and me, had built. But then larger and larger companies wanted to play, and they wanted to make special deals that would allow them to come in and take more time to get their messages in front of you. Maybe it was longer ads or sponsored content or short films or even feature-length content that had ad-generating capabilities. And it ended up being, in the end, like watching TV, but on your phone instead of your television. So maybe what's really happening is that social media, or at least social media content, is being replaced by television and magazines and the companies that sponsored all that advertising that kept those platforms alive for all those years. As for whether future generations will rely solely on social media for their sources, I doubt it. Most people know the power of social media relies on smaller groups that are vocal, and there tends to be an algorithmic division that occurs with both social media and digital search. People who have a particular position on an issue will be fed more of the same position because that's where the algorithm finds that they spend their time. And the algorithm is designed to maximize ad revenues, not to feed you materials that will make you think about opposing viewpoints. And as people recognize that social media has a built-in bias toward whatever it is you already believe, as well as an ability to be controlled by small groups and bots and manipulations of the algorithms, they'll continue to seek out official sources. Unfortunately, once those official sources have a need for generating revenue to stay afloat, they'll also buy into the algorithms that feed their audiences exactly what they'll want, so that they'll keep on viewing, sharing, and otherwise engaging, so that the advertisers will be satisfied. So the public will continue to feel comfortable that they've acquired their information from unbiased official sources while they've been a part of the data that feeds into the bias. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy for information gathering. But I'll tell you what, if you can figure out a way to open up people's minds to less biased algorithmic processes and more maybe middle-of-the-road thinking, you'll likely uncover a gold mine of opportunities for advertising to reach larger audiences without having to play both sides of the game with respect to the various issues and perspectives that currently exist in the information marketplace. Tabria asks, as a marketing manager, how will you manage customers giving negative social media reviews about your product? Marketers who only want positive reviews are marketers who don't want to face the reality that they cannot please all of their customers all the time. With that said, while we might normally want to deal with customer issues privately for various reasons, including customer privacy, there really are a lot of times when addressing negative feedback publicly can help the brand. And this usually happens in two different ways. First, there's the opportunity to resolve an issue publicly and turn a negative situation into a positive one. Of course, this needs to be done in a way that's respectful both to the customer and to any of your employees that were involved in the incident. You don't want to be known as a brand that disrespects customers, but you also don't want to be known as a brand that disrespects employees. Imagine the difficulty of trying to hire good people after you've thrown other good people under the bus for making what they felt were truly good decisions based on your company's policies. This has to also be done in a way that doesn't encourage more people to complain with the end game that they'll get free products or free airfare or massive refunds or whatever the case may be. We hear all the time that the customer is always right, but we really should think about this from the perspective that the customer should always be listened to, that their feelings are valid, that they may think that what you did was unfair or wrong, and that they're owed an explanation of why you did what you did and how you'll try to resolve the issue. I found that in almost every case, if you're caring and fair, you'll find a solution. A second way that addressing an issue publicly can help your brand is by helping other people understand your brand and your organization better. Your explanation of why a product or service or policy or process is how it is and why you won't change it can help potential customers know if you're the brand for them or not. It's just as important to not try to serve customers you can't really serve as it is to serve those customers you can serve. And oftentimes issues arise when you've attracted the wrong customers. It doesn't mean that they're bad customers. It just means that they can be better served by a different brand or a different organization. They'll be happier. You'll be happier. And yes, your competitor is probably going to be happier as well. Let's consider this coronavirus pandemic example. If there's a set of potential customers who only want to be in an enclosed space where others are wearing face masks, then those individuals would probably feel more comfortable in a store that makes and enforces that policy. On the other hand, a different set of potential customers may feel like wearing face masks is too restrictive, and they would seemingly be happier in a store then that doesn't have that requirement. It's because we're typically attracted to the brands and products and services and organizations that match at least some of our interests, desires, and even values. And sometimes it's the public discussion of dissatisfied customers that will either attract or repel us from a brand or an organization. And one more thing about handling those negative reviews. It's also a good idea and a good time to reach out to satisfied customers and ask them to relate their positive experiences on social media so that social media audiences can really have both sides of the satisfaction story. Melissa asks, do you think unpaid internships are still as effective as they used to be? Or should college students avoid them? During the past 7 or so years, I've supervised around 400 student internships for marketing, logistics, sales, advertising, social media, and a number of other related areas. While most of these have been paid internships, about 20 to 30% in any given year are unpaid. Now, I typically would prefer that people received paid internships because then those people get something for the time and effort and talent that they're providing to the companies. However, when you're a paid intern, most companies want you to be doing something productive at any given moment, even if that task is menial, which after a while becomes meaningless. An unpaid intern, though, can be asked to sit in on meetings and ponder new strategies and come to lunch with a client because they're not being paid to produce something at that very moment. And that's exactly how many of these internships have worked out. Companies, particularly small companies that couldn't necessarily have afforded an intern for 15 hours a week at $15 an hour, were still willing to bring in someone and show them the business or pay for their training or licensing or certifications, or maybe spend time answering questions over lunch because those bosses didn't feel like they needed to get productive time out of every hour that the interns were being paid. What I would suggest is if you can land a paid internship, do it. And ask very explicitly if you can add in an extra 5 or so hours per week that are unpaid, and ask if you can use that time to shadow a higher level manager and sit in on meetings and attempt work that you're not necessarily qualified to do. and it's likely that they'll let you do it because you're not being paid to do it. The goal is to get experience, training, and knowledge not only about the industry at its lower levels, but at its higher levels as well. Find out how various people in the organization make decisions. How do they deal with issues that arise? What do they consider when they think about future directions or competition or exit strategies? Getting an internship that provides you with knowledge, experience, training, and connections is likely much more valuable than whatever money you'll make during the short time that you're there. But you need to manage your internship in a way that makes sense for you so that you can get out of it what you'll need to progress in your career. That's all for today. Thank you for the questions. I always appreciate them. If you have a question about digital marketing, social media, personal branding, marketing communications, analytics, or anything related, tweet your question using the hashtag AskMiyazaki. If you've not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can be notified of future Ask Miyazaki videos, as well as Monday's Marketing Minute or whatever else comes your way.